Yo, what's going on, guys? I'm ThorendReynHERE, but you could call me Thor, and holy sh**. This is absolutely incredible. The last video has performed far better than I could have ever imagined for my first long-form video. Getting a whopping 6,500 views and 135 subscribers. Out freaking standing. You guys are awesome, and I appreciate all of the supportive comments, and of course, thank you very much for watching. I just wanted to give you guys a little status update on the project. I'm still editing the video that I've already pre-recorded. I haven't actually been playing the game that much, and it's not due to burnout. Actually, it's quite the opposite. I've been planning out the entirety of Phase 1 before I get back into the game. Not only does this give me an overall plan to finish Phase 1, but it also dials in the focus of future videos. In fact, I've got a little sneak peek to share with you guys of the plans I've been working on. I've been using Satisfactory Modeler pretty heavily. And for now, I'll just give a high-level overview of what my factory is going to look like. To start, I'll have a 704 megawatt biomass burner power plant that will consume 240 leaves per minute and 72 wood per minute. That power plant will then run a 4 per minute smart plating factory, which will consume 645.2 megawatts. It'll also take raw resources of 600 iron ore per minute, 320 copper ore per minute, and yes, you see that correctly. I am using Caterium ore in this factory, a little under 43 Caterium ore per minute. In an ideal situation with zero interruptions, I calculate it to be able to complete Phase 1 in about 21 hours. With that said, let's get back into the grind with hard mode Satisfactory. Last time, I'd managed to get an extremely rudimentary starter factory set up. This got an initial workflow established for products requiring iron and concrete, but with the lack of a copper assembly line, I'm finding that I have to stop a lot to manually craft anything that requires copper. Additionally, managing fuel by hand is quickly becoming more of a chore than what I want to deal with, causing that dreaded sound of the grid going offline whenever one or more of my burners eventually runs out of fuel. So today, I'll get the copper products automated and start getting the initial power plant set up and work through the various obstacles that came up while doing so. Picking up where we left off, I had said last time that I wanted to get a power plant set up, so I'll go ahead and start laying out some more foundations. There we go. Get a little ramp set up too. Remember that dreaded noise I had mentioned before? Yep. All the more justification to get this power plant up and running. Let's see what's going on here. The graph indicates generators shutting down, and sure enough, out of fuel. Let's just give this one some fuel. Alright, should be good to go for a little while anyway. So, let's get back to the power plant project. One thing I learned from my first playthrough of Satisfactory, if you're not happy with the setup that's already running, don't tear it down right away. Build its replacement first, or set it up so you can move things over in stages. Because honestly, it's way better to have something inefficient that still works than to shut everything off and start from scratch. Trust me, I've made that mistake, and it's not pretty. That's how you burn yourself out real fast. So, I'm going to need materials to build a few more burners, and you know what that means. Handcrafting. Alright. With that out of the way, and enough materials gathered, I can finally start building the first iteration of my biomass burner array. Well, I say iteration, but this is really more of a prototype. It's super basic. Just 2 burners, a splitter, and a storage container. So I've got one place to drop off all the biomass. Yeah, it's super simple, but it'll let me start moving generators over from the hub without additional handcrafting. Just gotta place down a few power poles and... jinxed myself again. Alright, let's relocate this pair of biomass burners over to the new plant. Hook up a quick manifold. And just like that, there's a total of 4 less generators that I have to feed by hand. I decide to pause development on the power plant for the moment, as I'm getting a bit annoyed that I keep getting interrupted to handcraft copper products. The good news is, as I've been working on the power plant, the rest of the factory has had ample time to produce the items needed to start working on the copper assembly line. Hooray, automation! I'll just lay down a few more foundations closest to the copper node at the north end of the factory. Run some initial conveyor belts. Plop down a more handcrafting. Which actually gave me time to realize I should probably place a smelter down first. Anyway, I get the constructor placed down and select the wire recipe, which, to my relief, is a nice and simple 1-to-1 ratio of copper ingots to wire. And with both input and output rates of just 30 per minute, there won't be any throughput issues with the Mark I conveyor belts. Then I definitely don't have to stop and do more handcrafting to build the next constructor for cable manufacturing. And unfortunately, as I select the cable recipe, this part of the copper assembly line will be bottlenecked, as the base input rate for cable is 120 wire per minute, or only 30 cable per minute. And since I'm only initially feeding it 30 wire per minute, I'm only going to have an effective rate of just 7.5 cable per minute. Well, that's better than 0 per minute. I'll just get this assembly line jump started with the spare copper ore I've got on hand and head on over to the copper node. Oh shit, here we go again. Alright, with that nuisance dealt with, it's time to replace these portable miners with a proper one. It feels a bit weird to be free-handing all these belts, but we've got to do what we got to do. I try to get things to look as smooth as possible with the curve build mode. And there we go, not too shabby. Now, just hook up the power lines. And we are off and running. Let's just check on the power consumption, shall we? And, ooh, 40 megawatts over capacity. But at least the current consumption is pretty low for now. How about the progress of the copper ore? I had said off and running, but crawling might be a better word for this. Man, that Mark II belt milestone is looking real enticing right now. We have a power plant design, so we can't get distracted with that right now. And it's definitely not perfect timing for a power outage. Well, let's get to work. I'll just throw in some biomass for the time being, just to get things up and running again. Up until this point, I've mostly gone over how the new modifiers create constraints in the early game. Now, things should start getting a little more interesting with some design discussions. First off, let's go over the current layout of the power plant and its drawbacks. I currently have a combination of a load balancer and a manifold, since the first pair of generators is getting over-delivered at an equal rate of 20 biomass per minute, and the second pair receiving 10 biomass per minute. For only 4 generators, this is fine, but I can squeeze in another 2 generators given the Mark I belt delivery rate. However, if I simply add another pair at the end of the array here, the second pair would only receive about 3.3 biomass per minute, and the last pair will only get 1.65 biomass per minute until the biomass can fill the first pair of burners. I'll skip the breakdown of the math to keep things short, but when I calculated it under theoretical conditions, this array won't spin up to full capacity until about an hour and 20 minutes later. And that's if I don't forget to refill the storage container. Now, you could argue that I could pre-fill the generators with biomass to get it started, but that kinda defeats the purpose of making the power plant to begin with. As the power plant scales up, so does the number of generators I'd have to go check. I'd like just one centralized drop-off location and never have to manually check the burners again. So with that, I have to admit, I'm a load balancer enjoyer. And I think for this particular use case, a load balancer makes way more sense to use over a manifold. Primarily because the input rate is likely not to be constant. Another benefit is that there's no ramp-up time to get up to full capacity. Once all the generators have any amount of fuel in them, it's simply back up and running once I reset the fuse box. Phew! With that out of the way, I'll get to work laying out a load balancer for the first array of burners. There, I'll just have to add a pair of burners at the end, and this will be a nice, compact 2x3 design. It was at this moment I realized I didn't have an active milestone, so I'll put this on hold for now to go pursue a new milestone that I've actually been thinking about. No, not Mark II belts. Obstacle clearing. Unlocking this milestone gives access to the chainsaw, which will help clear out the trees around the growing factory and increase my collection rate of biomaterial. What I'm really after, though, is the solid fuel. Or at least I thought I was at the time. I'll have more to say about that in a bit. I have the cable and the concrete already automated, so the 100 count requirement for both of those items is fairly straightforward. However, the 500 screws, I've only gotten iron rods partially automated. So... Actually, you know what? This is satisfactory. And this is not at all satisfactory. Wait. Forget what I said. Let's just get a bit of screws automated. It's actually not a terrible ratio. 1 iron rod produces 2 screws. There's no way I completely forgot about something important, right? Oh yeah, I'm already 40 megawatts over. Now 60. Well, there goes that idea. Back to the crafting bench I go. Alright, let's drop off what I've got so far. Not bad. About halfway there. We'll just go ahead and skip the next 6.5 minutes of me running around the factory to highlight that I happen to bump into a quartz deposit as I'm collecting biomaterial. That will come in handy later. It's not long afterwards that I wrap up the rest of the milestone. All right, let's get that chainsaw. Are you kidding me? 320 more screws? and 10 reinforced iron plate, which means another 120
Additionally,
screws.
your pocket dimension has been
Crying out
inflated to
loud,
increase
that's
inventory size.
440 screws.
Fun.
Well, this at least gives me an opportunity to start crafting some of that nice new solid biofuel that I just unlocked. I'll hot swap out the biomass in the burners and turn that into more solid fuel too. Everything seems to be in good working order. The solid biofuel is taking 15 seconds to burn rather than the 6 seconds for biomass. This all seems good, right? Well, not quite, as some of you might have already noticed. We'll loop back to this in a bit. Alright, time to do what every pioneer does. Sit here and admire my work for a minute. There's just something so satisfying about watching the fuel get equally loaded into the burners. But as I'm doing so, I'm realizing, despite the small footprint of the array here, I'm gonna run out of space real fast. I think on it for a moment and visualize having a fuel drop-off area on the ground floor. Then, have the fuel lifted up to the burner arrays to the floors above. I look around a bit and see the archway above. I definitely don't want to build into that. Hey, wait a minute. There's a shiny power slug up there. Time to go on a tangent. There's no way this could lead to an unfortunate workplace incident. Nope. Perfectly safe. Nothing bad could happen at all. Ow. Well, let's make our way back up there. Oh, there's a limestone node here. Just impure. Oh, but there's another one over here. And this one's a pure limestone node. Ooh, nice. I'll have to keep a mental note of these ones later. Oh, look at that. Another power slug. How did I miss that from the first time? Maybe things do happen for a reason. That might be a bit of foreshadowing. Alright, let's try this again. Ow! Alright, I'm making this way too hard on myself. Why didn't I think of this before? Alright, come here, you. Jeesh. Alright, I can totally make this jump. No. No, I can't. Hold up. Am I going crazy, or... You hear that? I so dubbed the Walking Dead bug. Well, that's awkward. Let's see. Let's just keep moving here like nothing ever happened, huh? Oh, look, someone dropped a crate for us. How nice of them. I wonder who that could have been. Alright, let's get back to work on constructing this power plant. I'll just mess around with some ceiling heights here. I'm sure this won't change. Excuse me. I'm trying to work here. Moving on. I would really rather not handcraft fuel any further. So, let's open up this constructor and take a look at the leaves to biomass recipe. It could take a blistering 240 leaves per minute to output just 60 biomass per minute. But I'm nowhere near capable of delivering items at that rate yet. I'll just have to settle with an effective production rate of just 15 biomass per minute for now. I take a look at the solid biofuel recipe, and it's at this point where we can see the issues with using this fuel type. Two big issues, actually. The first is the 4:1 ratio and how it drops the output rate down to only 15 biofuel per minute, which I'd need at least 24 per minute to keep up with 6 generators. The second, less obvious issue, which I was made aware of in the comments of the previous video, is that because of the 2x multiplier in this game mode, solid biofuel is actually less energy dense than biomass. Let's break it down a bit. Biomass has an energy content of 180 megajoules, whereas solid fuel has 450 megajoules. If we multiply 4 by 180 megajoules, we get 720 megajoules. 270 megajoules more when compared to the resulting amount of solid biofuel. It's now crystal clear that it's not worth using solid biofuel to power the generators. Pretty wild, huh? Solid biofuel is actually a downgrade in this game mode. Now, with that said, I should state that I didn't actually know about this downgrade while recording my playthrough. So later on, you'll see me still using it as fuel until I get caught up with editing the recordings. With that out of the way, I actually have an idea to help with the factory's rampant power consumption. This idea requires the completion of the milestone Field Research. This gives access to a handful of new rewards, such as the map and the object scanner, but what my idea requires is the use of the MAM. I'll just need 300 wire, 100 plate, and of course, it would require 300 more screws. Dang it! I've got a fair amount of cable stored in my last constructor and my copper assembly line, so I'll just disconnect it so I can begin stockpiling some wire. The iron plate is of no hassle at this point. And I think you guys get the point now that there's still lots of handcrafting to do with this game mode. So I'll start skipping past all that. 11 minutes later, I get all the items, complete the milestone, and unlock the MAM.
Potential
But
technologies
before I get
include
too ahead of
exploration
myself,
tools,
I gotta get
weapons,
5 more
and
reinforced
factory
iron
buildings.
plates.
These are essential for maximizing your
Within
Pioneer
the next 6
efficiency
minutes
in
of
alignment
crafting,
with FICSIT's
I
core
also
pillars.
decide to pick up the part
Construct,
assembly
mod-
milestone for my next goal of getting the assembler machine and its recipes, which includes the first project part, smart plating. Now, let's get back to why I'm placing down the MAM. Remember when I said sometimes things happen for a reason? Well, what I'm after actually requires 3 power slugs, which I just so happen to have. And now it should be perfectly clear what I'm trying to unlock. That's right, overclocking. Now, some of you might be saying to yourself, Thor, have you gone mad? Won't overclocking make things worse for power consumption? To which I'd say, yes, you're absolutely right. However, unlocking overclocking also allows for underclocking of machines. A good amount of machines are requiring input rates higher than I can even supply right now, so underclocking them has no downside. In addition to this, the power reduction isn't linear, meaning you actually gain a little power efficiency bonus for tuning the machines appropriately. Even though I won't be using it, let's take this constructor with the solid biofuel recipe as an example. Underclocking the machine so that the input rate matches the Mark I belt throughput, we can underclock down to 25% without any loss of effective output rate. As you can see, this reduces the machine's power consumption down to just 16%. Now isn't that satisfying? Putting everything together, I place down 2 constructors at the beginning of the burner array. One will be configured for leaves to biomass, and the other wood to biomass. After underclocking them both, I see that wood will be doing most of the heavy lifting here, with 1 wood creating 2.5 biomass. While we're at it, let's do a quick sanity check to make sure the conversion to biomass is even worth it. 20 leaves at 15 megajoules each gives a total of 300 megajoules. 5 biomass at 180 megajoules each yields 900 megajoules. So, we're all good here. 8 wood at 100 megajoules each gives us 800 megajoules. 20 biomass results in a whopping 3,600 megajoules. So we're more than okay here. With all that said, I really need to get back to making the chainsaw. Yes, Thor likey. Just got to get a little solid biofuel and... Whoa. Sorry about that. I got a little carried away. Anyway, with all this new biomateria collected, I'll throw it in the storage containers and check on the constructors here. With leaves to biomass only consuming 3.2 megawatts and wood to biomass only consuming 2.4 megawatts, the cost of semi-automating biomass is only costing me 5.6 megawatts in total. With 6 generators producing 180 megawatts, I have a net total output per array of 174.4 megawatts. Only about 3.1% is being lost to power automation. Not too bad at all. With all that figured out, I start the process of building the first floor, and getting a conveyor lift constructed. I also decide that I want to double up on power generation and create a second array. And for some reason, I decided somewhere along the lines to do this weird T-shaped layout. Not sure why I did that, but once I get back to the playthrough, I'll probably change it back to the 2x3 layout. After about 50 minutes of all this, I finally have the factory's power grid in a much healthier state, with a total of 390 megawatts of capacity. Must have a random burner sitting around somewhere. Oh well. But I think that's going to be it for this video. Let me know what you guys think about this Phase 1 power plant design. If you liked the video, go ahead and hit that like button, and if you want to join me on this hard mode playthrough, hit that subscribe button. I would truly appreciate it. Anyways, guys, that's it for me. Have a good one. Peace.